right. Well, it's been a big day. Wanted to give a little bit of an update and a little bit of a spoiler alert. As of 8 p.m. today, we have received royal assent for the first 4 clean economy tax credits, being carbon capture, use and storage, hydrogen, clean technology, and clean technology manufacturing. That means that as of today, we have 4 legislated tax credits for clean technology. More details to follow, and certainly some details in the webinar that is following now, but we wanted to provide a quick update before we hopped into this webinar. Thank you very much and enjoy the webinar. Bye-bye. All right, well, it is 4:01, so I think we should probably get started. We've got a very packed agenda today, and as I say, a few surprises that we may throw in as well. My name is Brian Watson. Thank you for joining us today from CleanTech North, Venbridge, and the Ontario Clean Tech Industry Association. Today, we wanted to focus in initially on the Clean Technology ITC, a few details on the tax credit itself, as well as showcase some of the technologies that may be able to leverage this tax credit, or their customers may be able to leverage this tax credit and create basically demand generation for their technologies. We will be branching into some of the other tax credits because there's some news coming down the pipes that I announced yesterday. So first off, we'll start with some housekeeping. We are recording. Anybody, please mute as we go, and certainly unmute when it's time to speak. If you do have any questions, and I suspect there may be some, please do put them in the Q&A. We will try and get to them. If not, we'll try and get to them after the session. There's a lot to cover. We've got 5 showcasing companies and some curveballs that have come down in the last 24 hours. So tax credit financing on my Venbridge hat. Certainly, if that's something that you are in need of for managing cash flow, feel free to reach out. And the good news is we might have some more tax credits to finance very, very soon, i.e. 4:09 p.m. I'll tell you why. Quick thank you to our sponsors, EDC, City of Toronto, Swan Law, Venbridge, and the Open Data Society. Thank you for your support. Couldn't do these without you. And I'm actually probably going to just leave the agenda up for 10 seconds and then invite Jeff Keats to say a couple words of welcome, Jeff, if you want, from EDC, who has been a longtime partner for these webinars and this ecosystem.
Yeah, no, thanks, Brian. Appreciate the chance to participate and support you on the webinar. As Brian knows, Export Development Canada is a Crown corporation. Our role, our mandate is to help Canadian companies grow and scale. We've got a strategic focus on the clean tech sector with a dedicated team. Last year, we supported over 440 companies in this space and facilitated over 12 billion of business in the clean tech sector in Canada. But a lot of that was done with some fantastic partners like Brian in his many hats, Venbridge, Optia, CleanTech North. It actually does take a village to help support the ecosystem with lots of different levers to pull. And of course, the ITCs are a big part of that going forward. So very excited to learn more from Brian and the team today. And I've already said way too much. So Brian, back to you.
All right. Well, to that end, as I say, packed agenda, but the breaking news yesterday was that as of yesterday, we have finished both sides of the House. We finished the House of Commons and Senate, third review at Senate of Bill C-59. This is the bill that we've been talking about for about 6 months, I think now, that houses 2 of the tax credits that we've been talking about for about 2 years. But as of last night, we are now awaiting royal assent. So both houses, it has passed, the Senate and the House of Commons. And so unless the King has a particular issue with these tax credits, or in our case, the Governor General, we expect to see royal assent, as you see noted there, imminently, and those to be legislated, as I say, imminently. The surprise, as you can see from the dates of the House of Commons report stage, third reading, and the Senate dates of the first reading, second reading, and the consideration of at committee of Bill C-69, all of which happened within the last 2 days. it looks like we might actually get our manufacturing and hydrogen tax credits, which are embedded in this year's budget bill, the C-69 budget bill. At 4:09 p.m., so in about 3 minutes, I've got the second screen going here with the vote going on at the Senate right now. So I may interrupt to let you know whether that has passed, but I rather suspect that it will, in which case that bill will also be waiting for royal assent, which should again be fairly forthcoming. So lots of good news this week. Seems to be lots of movement before the summer session ends for some reason, but we're very happy to see that, and want to move into a little bit of the clean technology tax credit and bring our friends Martin McLaughlin and Jonathan in here. I won't go into all the different technologies that are in the clean technology tax credits, and these categories don't really do it justice. There's a lot more in the various different asset classes that are covered. There's a lot of nuance, and you really do have to get into the weeds of the asset classes and the types of assets in class 43.1, 43.2, and a bunch of other different asset classes. But broad strokes, these are the assets that can be covered by the clean technology tax credit. From zero emission vehicles, non-road industrial zero emission vehicles, and there's some calibration on definition that's still needed there, to batteries. And just quickly, we've said it before, we'll say it again. It's about 30. It is a 30% capital cost based investment tax credit that can be backdated to March 28, 2023. So I want to open the floor for a couple minutes to both Martin and Jonathan. Thoughts on this tax credit, or anything that you think people should know about this tax credit and how to claim that. Maybe throw it open to over to Martin first.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, this is a great tax credit. And I think when these investment tax credits were first announced, there's obviously, it covers a lot of different things, whether it's manufacturing or whether it's hydrogen or whether it's carbon capture. I think the broadness of the clean technology investment tax credit is a great advantage to a lot of different companies. It covers anything from businesses in the real estate sector all the way through to manufacturing. And so the idea being that, to the extent this is an adoption investment tax credit, you don't have to be manufacturing the equipment. You don't have to be, implementing clean hydrogen. The idea is that if you are acquiring property that fits into the categorizations that are eligible under the legislation, and as you said, further categorizations under classes 43.1 and 43.2 of the income tax regulations, then you are entitled to claim this investment tax credit. I think the 30% credit is obviously sort of the enhanced credit that you get. There is that labor component that's connected to it, and I think that's a really important factor as people start to undertake these types of projects. I think planning in advance, you're going to undertake a project, making sure that you have sort of all your ducks in a row as you sort of undertake this project so that you can pick up that enhanced 30% credit is going to be really important, because the labor conditions, they make up 33% of the investment tax credit. So it's making sure that you hit all those points is going to be really important to capture the full credit.
And just Coles Notes versions of those. That's prevailing wage. That's linked to apprenticeship and red seal trade. So what am I missing? What am I remembering?
So there's prevailing wage conditions, which basically says that workers have to be paid in line with the collective bargaining agreement. To the extent that there is an agreement in place that they're covered under, then they would look to a comparable agreement. The secondary piece is that apprenticeship requirement that you talk about, which really means that there is an apprenticeship requirement whereby 10% of the hours spent by red seal workers or equivalent has to be spent by apprentices or registered apprentices. So, keeping track and documentation is going to be really key as the CRA comes in to look at these things, because you have to file that attestation to demonstrate that you've met those requirements. So just something to keep in mind as people undertake these types of investments.
It's a good comment, and that it is an attestation. So you are attesting that you are keeping that evidence, and they can audit whether you are keeping that evidence and compliant with that. Jonathan, I see you nodding. You thought of that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that isn't, this is somewhat new to the construction industry and in general, that they would have to sort of provide this as kind of mandatory. So I think you're going to see some, you're going to have to work with whoever it is that is implementing this, putting this thing into place to really get them to understand they need to do this in advance. And I completely agree. You're going to have to document it. And I think, one of the concerns is that you might get pushback. I'm not worried about the prevailing wage. Given the wage environment in Canada, it's like you're going to pay through the nose, so that's not a problem. The apprenticeship at 10%, I think, is going to become a real issue. I think there's going to be a lot of companies that are just going to be like, yeah, that'd be great. We'd love to do that. You got some apprentices you can show us?
Yeah.
Finding qualified people who are actually in these programs, I think, is going to be factually difficult. From my understanding, talking to the construction people that I've met before, they were just how's that going to work? So that is a risk. The other thing in there that we did talk about and that we have seen an improvement on is that previously, all of these ones had issues about new equipment and that there'd be a clawback after 20 years. And Martin, that's been put back to 10 years now, as I understand, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it's been reduced.
Yes, so there's a clawback on the 10 years that if you buy it and then you sell it, you could wind up getting it clawed back. I think that's a risk because people don't know what necessarily is going to happen in the next 10 years. But then the other issue I think that there has been some movement on is this concept of new. And it was entirely, which seems sort of weird because this was about green tech, but no refurbishment or recycling or any of that allowed. And I think they've moved the ball on that, Martin. So Brian was saying that you were working with the government, that you were working on a committee with regard to that. Has there been any movement on this issue of new equipment versus refurbishment or recycling?
No, I mean the rules still say that it has to be new and never have been used before. So in that sense, to the extent that you're acquiring clean tech property, it still has to be new. And I think part of the reason for that is to ensure that you're not ending up with a scenario where you have, where two companies, one company claims the credit and another company sort of subsequently claims the credit. They're giving out the credit twice. I can see the issue with that.
I can see the flipping issue, but that's a question of drafting as well to avoid flipping or double dipping or double crediting for the same equipment. But if an appeal, and so that I think that's going to be, within the legislation itself, it's still not, as you can tell, this was rushed. Okay, it was slow, and then it was rush at the end, and so there's still some nits in there, but those are the ones that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about that 10%. I'm concerned about the 10-year, and I'm concerned about the new as being sort of potential hitches. But then there's all that other stuff. But other than that, woohoo! Like, right, let's go, boys. Let's go. So,
I think judging by the reaction on LinkedIn last night to the post that was up, I think there was a collective woohoo and let's go from the ecosystem, because certainly lots of folks have been waiting for this. We will be tracking some of those issues as they come in terms of the refurbishment. I know in the manufacturing there's a little bit more discussion on refurbishment of equipment and things like that. Part of it relates to, for the clean tech side, what is being refurbished? Is it the pitch motor of your windmill or the turbine? Does that count, even though it's not the full turbine? And my understanding is that some the component parts may be eligible. Is that your understanding?
Take out a part, put a new part in. Okay. If that's new,
is that your thinking as well? Somebody had asked the question on the turbine recently, and I mean, large capital expense for a turbine.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be fact dependent. I think, like, when I read the legislation, that has not been acquired for use or lease for any purpose whatsoever before it was acquired by the taxpayer. I guess the question really boils down to refurbishment aspect. With other manufacturing and processing investment tax credits, like the Atlantic investment tax credit, they are stipulating that some of the refurbishments would not be something that would qualify. So I think it really depends on the way the government's going to do this. I do think your point around, like, the fact that it has to be a new piece of equipment. We're talking about clean technology. We're talking about reusing equipment. I think there's a question that comes into play there. But I mean, there's a couple of things, I think, Jonathan, that you touched on. One, around the 10-year recapture. There is the ability to transfer property to related parties. So that's one piece that kind of can defer that transfer. And then there's another piece related to that I wanted to touch on really quickly too, around the apprenticeship requirements. The government's outlined a series of sort of deemed reasonable efforts that would dictate, to the extent that you can't meet that 10% requirement, what that's going to look like from a government perspective to ensure that you're meeting the highest level. And so they've got a series of steps in place. Originally, when the first draft legislation was released, there wasn't a lot of information related to what those deemed reasonable efforts are, but now they've actually put some, I'd say, concrete steps in place that you have to meet in order to make sure. So to the extent that those apprentices aren't available, there is methods and there are ways that taxpayers can ensure that they're still making those efforts to get to that 30% investment tax credit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, overall, I've seen more flexibility and adaptability towards certain parties use the words that I wouldn't have expected to use the words. Minimum viable policy or minimum viable product, startup words when it came to the legislation that I was actually quite pleased that they were using, understanding that it needs a framework that is a little bit flexible because this is like changing the engine while driving down the 401, or I should say battery and dynos. But anyways. Okay, with that, I mean, feel free to put the questions in the Q&A. We'll certainly try and circle back to them. I want to leave a little bit of time, or enough time, to showcase some of the company. Jonathan?
I was one last comment. The big fundamental difference between the CCUS and the clean tax credit, as always, which is my concern about this, is that the CCUS, the technology is going to be effectively NRCan, and anybody but the CRA is great, but not being the CRA, determining whether or not you are actually technologically eligible makes the CCUS a better thing. They don't have that. You're going to be dealing with the CRA. Their technology capacity is occasionally very dubious, and so they're, the problem will be there are potential for disputes for them to say, no, this doesn't qualify because they don't understand the technology. Whereas you don't have that with CCUS. You can get certification in advance. And I think from the perspective of being able to, as you say, perhaps finance these credits, Brian, CCUS, you're certified. You're good. You're good. Okay. And as long as you follow all the other stuff, you should be able to get your credits. Whereas with this one, you're still facing a little bit more risk, and having the ability to have some other technologically capable entity certify that you do, in fact, technologically qualify would have been good, but it's
absolutely not. Yep. No, I agree. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Just wanted to add one thing. So actually, Jonathan, to that point, they did add a section around the authority of the Minister of Natural Resources to this credit as well. So that is included in the Clean Technology Investment Tax Credit. Yeah, it's something that they've added as part in later kind of revisions to the draft. So it's good news to the point where, to your point, where the minister is going to be releasing the guidance around sort of what types of equipment, sort of that framework around how the equipment qualifies. The legislation has now included information on minister.
The minister, the authority for determining technological qualification is within the Minister of NRCan and not in CRA. Yes, that's a good thing. That is a good thing. Sorry about that. I did miss that. I did not see that.
No, there's a lot to take in, and speaking of taking in my second screen over here before we hop to the companies, I see a lot of clapping and standing at 4:19 p.m. And it looks like the standing vote at the the Senate has just passed. I am guessing Bill C-69. We will obviously let you know afterwards, but that means our manufacturing and our hydrogen companies should be very, very happy. We'll circle back because obviously I'm not going to turn the volume on now. But to that end, Thank you, Jonathan Martin. We'll probably have an in-depth session on each of the tax credits to go into the actual legislation in the near future. These are sort of high-level touch points on changes, but I think it's probably worth going into the weeds a little bit again, like we did last year, but with the real legislation versus the press releases and trying to guess at what's going on. So, with that, Lynn, I wanted to turn things over to you, Mr. Lynn Mueller from Shark Energy. Lynn, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you. Yes, you're good.
Great. Well, thank you so much. A very exciting day for us, Brian, and couldn't be more excited. I'm out here on a patio in downtown Vancouver on Commercial Street, having dinner or lunch with the Honorable Mike Harcourt. So it's a big day. But Shark Energy is kind of a Canadian. I'm a farm boy from Alberta. Shark Energy was conceived, designed, invented, produced in Canada. And now, by God, we got a market for it. It's really, really exciting for us. And we do some really neat projects from waste heat. And who would have thought that the sewer system of the world is the largest reservoir of renewable energy in the world, and that's 938 trillion liters of water that's been warmed 30 degrees Fahrenheit every year that can be recovered at 400% efficiency. So things like the 30% tax credit now gets us really busy in Canada. We were always so close to the decision of doing it, not doing it, but I think it shows the government's serious. It shows now there's a return on making a smart strategical investment for the future. And we're looking forward to working with you, Brian, to find all the details. But one kind of neat project we did too is on the Musqueam First Nations Reserve here in Vancouver. They developed a 23-acre development that very few people have probably heard about, but last year we were the greenest project in Canada there for the Clean 50. But it's 23 acres, 1,250 housing units. That is a carbon-free development. 80% of the energy we use there is recovered from the wasteline, and 20% is the clean electricity to move it around. So we couldn't be more excited. We're hiring people like crazy. Like you say, finding skilled tradesmen is going to be one of the stumbling blocks. But you know, we just do these neat little projects like downtown Vancouver. There's a project with sharks on it. We just put 5 new shark systems in to heat and provide hot water for 22 million square feet of apartments in downtown Vancouver. And it's located under the Cambie Street Bridge, which is amazing, and delivers heat all the way to Knight Street on 2nd Avenue. So couldn't be more excited, Brian. Anxious to work with you and work with the new legislation and keep the flow of business in Canada and not flow into the 55% reduction in the US.
Absolutely, and I like your understatement of neat little projects with square feet in the millions. So thanks, Lynn. Really appreciate that, and we really wanted to showcase both the technology but also the implementation side, because again, these are adoption tax credits by and large. They are focused on the adoption of new technologies. And to the next, we'll go over to Don Trost. Dennis. Sorry. There we are. There we go.
Just give me a second here to can I share my screen?
Yep, you should be able to override.
Oh, there we go. There we go. You should be seeing this deck here, right?
Yep.
Is my cover page showing? I can't see what I'm showing.
You're good.
Yep. Okay. So because we have limited time, TROS was founded in 2018, and what we're built around is the concept of the transition in energy, which is obviously we're talking about with this legislation. We see the vision for the future as the grid infrastructure itself is going to transform from a centralized generation model that with long wires down to the loads to a much more distributed set of microgrids that have the generation and the loads in close proximity. And then we'll interconnect all those microgrids to share power. So you'll create an effective distribution network that matches the capability of the centralized, but much more decentralized. That's going to be far cheaper, far more robust, and far more resilient for the future. We focus on commercial industrial because that's the group that has the hardest time adopting this. And the biggest challenge there is it's technically complex, and most of the customers don't have the technical skill in their companies to deal with this. It's hard to scale in the technology because every customer has slightly different needs. And so we've really talked about in our business how to do that and deliver it in an effective way. So these gray boxes are the pieces of technology we have. We're in production. We have lots of sites. I'll go through them in a minute. We create with the hardware itself, battery energy storage, which is key. This is a diagram of a microgrid. You've got some renewable generation. You might have a generator. You might have the existing grid. And then you've got some loads, which could be EV chargers or buildings or combinations of things. So we bring the battery storage. It's absolutely key to making all of this integrate smoothly. And then we have 3 layers of software that we bring. My Control, which integrates all of the information around around the storage side and all the safety controls. Then we have our MyGrid operator, which operates the whole site and decides which electron to use from where at any given instant, according to the algorithms that we develop with the customer. And then we have our MyGrid monitor platform, which feeds data up into the cloud, and you can go online and see any site we have operationally what's going on at we sample every battery cell and every network every 30 seconds, and we archive all that data, including the solar generation and other aspects of it. We also have a mobile app for our partners, the project developers. They can go look at any of their sites from their phone. So if a customer calls and says, hey, my generation is not doing what I think it's supposed to be doing, they can go look at online and just see what's going on and see if it is in fact a problem. So that's our technology. We're in many countries right now. We have both the channel partners. We're in Canada, US, in the Caribbean, and several islands. We're going to be delivering to Colombia later this fall. We're in the UK. We're in China. So we've got a lot of systems built around the world. Let me just go to the site, give you some pictures of some of the sites, what they look like. This is in Markham. This is a solar EV charging station. So there's our batteries, there's a solar array, there's the converters, and you can't really see them in this picture, but there's EV chargers here that sit there. This is in Nova Scotia. This is a virtual power plant that's networking a huge solar array plus several of these units that we built for them. Here's some additional pictures of that. Just a couple of really cool projects. This is probably the neatest one we got. This is in St. Lucia. This is a sports field. We run the power for the whole thing with our microgrid operator. It's completely off grid. It uses solar. These are our batteries. The government gave us the algorithm. The algorithm is pretty straightforward. It's at 6 p.m. We turn on all the lights on the sports field. We power up the concession stands and so on. And at 11 p.m. they want it all shut down because it's in a neighborhood. So our algorithm is pretty simple. Fill the batteries from the solar all day long and then run the whole site off the batteries until 11 p.m. And it has a backup generator as part of that. There's a diesel generator. That generator has never gone on. It was a brand new generator we purchased for the project, and it's never gone on yet in over a year. So it's fantastically working fantastically. Our model is very simple. We work with project developers, engineering firms, and so on that actually build these sites, and they deal with the end users. We typically don't deal with the end users directly. And we have several what we call ODM customers, where we design a product that is a standard product for them and their product portfolio. And they just give us repeat orders for that same product. We manufacture it, we design it, manufacture it. They brand it and sell it in their projects. I just want to talk about our team. Vienna Jo founded the company in 2018. I joined her very shortly after she founded it, a few months later. Pasquale joined us going on almost 3 years ago. He's a PhD in electrical engineering and power. He's a very strong leader for our engineering team. We've got 29 people in our company today, so we're in full production. For anybody on this call that's from the financial world, if you would like to lead our Series A, we'd love to talk to you. We have a lot of follow-on investors lined up. We're looking to raise up to 20 million in a mix of equity and debt. Probably 14 Canadian of equity would be what we're looking for. And so I want to just stop there because we have limited time. Thank you.
Dennis, thank you very much. It's yeah, in Canada, trying to find a lead right now is obviously not the easiest thing, but certainly I know there's a number of folks on this webinar, and we'll see what we can do to help out with that. But certainly the type of work that you're doing right now, your customers, or depending on the business model, if you are operating these, it could be potentially that you collect those tax credits. So certainly the customers, if they are buying those, and based in Canada, not the islands, but as long as they're in Canada and the assets are deployed here, tax credits will be generated from those projects, whether they're captured by the customer or another entity that is created for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a program that's under development for Canada specifically for off-grid microgrids, especially for remote and rural communities, to take it countrywide. And we're going to manufacture here as well for that.
Very good. Well, that manufacturing tax credit, I'm still seeing clapping at the Senate, so I'm guessing that's still going through. But we should have that, and we'll have another discussion on that as well. So thank you very much. Sticking with the grid theme, I believe we've got Bedad or Tanner here from EdgeCon.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
There, good. Just trying to find here.
And Tanner was surprised. The last second I told him he has to do a webinar. No, he's still at Collision. So
okay, very good,
yeah.
very good. There you are.
So give me 1 sec. Let me bring up the screen. So, right.
Wonderful.
All right. So hi, everyone. I'm Bedad Barami. I'm the co-founder and CEO of EdgeCom Energy. At EdgeCom Energy, we use AI and IoT energy management solutions to help primarily large manufacturing facilities, large industrial facilities navigate the energy transition. All the things that we're talking about today with the tax credits fit in one way or another with the platform that we've created that helps these facilities save energy and reduce on their emissions as well. So really our mission is we empower large energy consumers to reduce energy costs and emissions through IoT and AI solutions. And I'm going to tell you about how we do that. So we have an energy management ecosystem. It involves grid analytics and price predictions and peak prediction. So that's a big part of what we do. We have proprietary machine learning algorithms that are able to pinpoint times when the grid is going to be very dirty or times when the grid is going to be very expensive. And then we relay that information to customers through an API and through a web-based dashboard through an iPhone app as well. So that's really the product that got us started. From there, we expanded into being a demand response aggregator through the IESO and the AESO in Alberta as well. And then we got into battery energy storage system optimization and control. So what we do is we provide a service that allows us to fully take control and do the full asset management of behind the meter battery energy storage systems. Right now, we're controlling 30 megawatts of battery systems, 4-hour battery systems times 30 megawatts. And most recently, we've launched an AI energy co-pilot. So we take all this data that we have from the facility, from the grid, and we compile it into a co-pilot, which is basically a virtual energy manager that helps these industrial facilities. In many cases, you have a VP of operations, or you might have a COO, or someone who's not really an energy expert who needs to navigate some of these programs. And that's where the co-pilot comes in and provides some info and some analysis. And just in April, we won an award with ABB out of Sweden. So we're going to be taking this co-pilot to 100,000 industrial facilities in early 2025. Right now, we're doing some of the testing and some of the deployment with ABB. And then underlying all this is our IoT platform. So we have IoT sensors. I have a few here with me as well. So these are plug and play, battery powered, wireless IoT devices. So if you're in an industrial facility, in many cases, you may not have visibility into how much energy you're actually consuming on specific pieces of equipment. So these are actually CTs that just clip over the wire. Any regular electrician can do it. There's no IT requirement. This device wirelessly connects to our centralized hub, and that is basically what empowers all of the platform to have facility data in addition to the grid data. Right now, we're controlling about 470 megawatts in Ontario and Alberta and the northeastern US. So this is customers that we're advising on curtailment strategies. If they have batteries, they might be dispatching those batteries. If they have fuel cells, they're dispatching those fuel cells, or they might actually just be doing curtailment, load shifting, flexible operations. We're also a certified B Corp, and some of Canada's and North America's largest energy consumers trust us for their energy management and peak management advice. So you can see West Fraser, we're using all of our platform. They're using all of it in Ontario and in Alberta, Alamos Gold, the Jeep plant here in Ontario, and you can see some of the other names here that trust us. We're also a certified B Corp, which puts that stamp of approval on the sustainability and the DEI initiatives that we've taken. So I just want to jump in a little bit deeper on the products. I'll try to be quick here. But the Copilot really enables us to aggregate all the information. So what's happening on the grid, what's happening in my facility, and make recommendations of how I should operate my plant more efficiently. So there's a hardware component here, but it's primarily a software-based solution. And the facility manager is able to inquire, how was my consumption last week versus the week before? What do my baselines look like? What are areas where certain chillers are out of the normal range of energy consumption, and what are some things I can do there? And now we're getting into actually real-time control through the Copilot as well. So making that automation process much easier for industrial facilities. The data track solution I talked about, so that's primarily an energy management information system powered by IoT sensors. The P-Track solution, it's the grid analytics, real-time price predictions, real-time peak predictions in Ontario and in Alberta, and we're building those capabilities in other jurisdictions as well. NeuroCharge, as I mentioned, we're controlling 30 megawatts of batteries here in Ontario, and this is a comprehensive asset management and battery management tool, which makes it super easy for the end user to see what's happening in their facility. Now, separate from the industrial division, we also have two parts of our business which focus on the residential sector and the builders, so new buildings and new construction. So we are also a billing provider. So if you are a condominium building where you're doing sub-metering, some of these IoT platform and some of the software capabilities that we have allow you to actually issue bills for your tenants. And we're adding those AI capabilities on top of this as well to make recommendations to actual tenants on ways that they can save energy and operate more efficiently. And finally, we have S-Track. This is a new division that we started about a year ago. David is leading this division. I think David's on the call. He comes to us from JLL, and it's really portfolio decarbonization, energy modeling for new construction. And all of these products and all of these solutions work together hand in hand to really create optimized energy cost savings, optimized emissions, all the way from the time where a building is being built, all the way to the time where now it's actually operating and manufacturing is happening there as well. We have a deep technical knowledge in our team. We have multiple PhDs, multiple electrical engineering graduates, and we have a great team here in Ontario. We also have a presence in Alberta, and we're trusted by some of Canada's largest energy consumers. So that's Edgecom Energy. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Absolutely, but and one of the reasons we wanted to have you here was your suite of projects really is a good example of the challenge that's going to come with some of these tax credits, which is how do you separate the eligible assets and eligible parts of the project from the ineligible, the capital cost from some of the software. Is the battery management system that, the batteries will not, work properly, is that claimable or not embedded? And Martin, you may have some thoughts on that particular aspect of, things like the battery management system. Where do we draw the line? Because this is because we're good.
That's a great question. I think it depends on the system and what's being implemented. Obviously, there's specific areas of the tax credits, like the carbon capture. There's monitoring systems, control systems that are sort of called out. So I think it really is fact dependent. And to the extent that you're using that equipment and we can sort of allocate it to an asset, I think that's going to be a question of fact. And so I know that's sort of a consultant's answer to the question. And guess what? I am a consultant. So,
And I hear you have a program called the Capital Asset Review Program that could probably help with some of those fact-finding missions.
Exactly. And I think that's just the cost segregation aspect is going to be really important as you look at these projects. Like, how can you break up your projects into the assets themselves? What fits into like application software versus what is something that would be integral to the functioning of that equipment? I think those are questions that are going to kind of roll out as you undertake these projects. Even to, battery backup, battery energy storage systems. You're going to have, surface construction and things that are going on that wouldn't necessarily be needed for the functioning of the battery, but other things like, site preparation may be eligible. So it's a real question of fact, and it really depends on the granularity that you can get at with your projects.
Absolutely, Martin. Thank you very much, because I really wanted to highlight a little bit of that question of analyzing the projects. I want to move now to Rob Alexander from Illuma Power. Rob, if you have any slides, I'll invite you to pull them up now. Thanks, Bedad.
Thanks, Brian. You guys can hear me okay?
You're great.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity to speak, Brian, to this group, and congratulations to everybody for getting this new legislation in place. I'm Rob Alexander, CEO of Illuma Power, and we are turning aluminum into the clean fuel of the future. Using aluminum, we can store energy forever, 2.5 times more energy per gallon than gasoline, in a safe, easily transportable format, entirely extractable with 0 emissions. When you think about what we're trying to do around the world, is we've decided we're going to use electrification to get greenhouse gases down. That's all a good thing. But the challenge is there's often charging deserts, places where the grid doesn't reach, or places where the grid is insufficient, and battery swapping becomes very expensive. That's where we fit in. We become a mobile charging unit in those charging deserts to provide those electrons so that we can get the whole economy transitioned. And just for reference, notionally, the number of fuel discs, which again, our fuel is aluminum discs, is shown there on this slide to give you kind of the equivalence of what we're doing is trying to take advantage of this high energy density that we get in aluminum. Our first product is a mobile power generator. And so on board per refuel of these aluminum discs is 1.5 megawatt hours of energy, which is substantial. Allows you to charge up to 25 Teslas. We can put up to 4 fast chargers on board and provide 300 kilowatt hours per day, again, without any grid connect and at 0 emissions. Now, our first customers in the first demonstrations that we'll be going to market with will start this summer, a courier company that that's electrifying their fleet. I'll give you some real details on that demonstration. In addition, we've just signed a contract with a local distribution company who wants to use it as a portable unit, and construction customers. So think about construction in remote sites away from the grid, where people want to take advantage of the new electric vehicles that are being created. I'll dig into this first demo, which will happen in August this year. This courier company currently is using e-cargo bikes to deliver packages in the last mile. Super efficient, about twice or half the cost, I guess, of trucks. And what they're doing is shown on the far right here. They're using a battery swapping. They're using a Blue Eddy going back and forth to the grid every single day. What they will do with our unit, and I actually snapped a picture of this yesterday at our unit, is we'll be powering that site and charging these e-cargo bikes at the beginning, ultimately becomes their trucks, providing 14 times longer duration in that site. So very, very long duration, clean energy. Probably asking the question how we do it. We didn't invent aluminum air batteries. They're invented back in the 60s, but traditionally they were this fixed plate system that you see on the left. And there are a lot of issues, and the reason you don't see them everywhere is because technical issues stopping and starting, but also usability issues. What our CTO did is he had this crazy idea to say, what if I spin the anode, spin the aluminum disc in this aluminum air battery? And first of all, that solved the technical issue. You can now stop and start very quickly by basically spinning the disc dry quickly. Secondly, though, it really improved the usability. So now to reload or refuel this generator, you just take out an old platen, put in a new disc. It's kind of like loading a CD drive or a DVD drive. The big surprise came, though, when we spun this disc, is that instead of having to use very pure aluminum, we can use scrap. And so effectively now the waste product's going to spun to the side. And as a result, we have a waste to fuel solution where we can take aluminum that's bound for landfill and turn that back into a fuel, which is really good from both a cost perspective because it's cheap as heck. And secondly, from a greenhouse gas perspective, we have no new emissions in this. And so you end up with this chemical milling process going on, which you can see kind of the surface difference in the bottom right. How does it work in practice? Essentially, and this is really my reason for talking to everybody here today, is it's an ecosystem. So yeah, we've created the technology. We need some other people that want to be part of this ecosystem. Starting with the fuel disc, we go from scrap aluminum, turn them into fuel discs, either with casting or with extrusion, add some the electrolyte in our units, add water, get electricity and heat, and then our off product is aluminum trihydrate. Aluminum trihydrate has a lot of value. This summer, we'll use it as a flocculant in water treatment plants in Toronto, but it has also applications in eco-cements and concrete and many other uses, and could ultimately, and this is our long-term vision, go back into making more aluminum and turning aluminum into a true fuel carrier. I'm very interested in other partners that want to get involved. Some of them are already on this phone. We really want to be behind the go-to-market partners that want to provide these services, either in EV charging or in the construction space to those end users. And we're happy to talk to you if you're in those spaces. Secondly, though, and we talked to Brian and Jonathan, a bunch of you, we see this ITC with these new legislation coming down is providing the ability to create financing vehicles. So groups of investors that want to buy, for example, our units and then lease these out to customers, and perhaps bid plug into some of your networks as a usable form. So that's where our head is going. This is super green. This is a made in Canada solution, and we'd love your help in taking advantage of it. Of course, we're all startups, so money's good. I just closed a Series A, oversubscribed. I've got another 2 million if the boards will allow me to go a little bit higher on this round. But it's really about commercializing right now and getting this product to market and taking advantage of it. So Brian, thank you for the opportunity to share.
Rob, always wonderful to see you and glad to have you here. And one of the reasons we wanted Rob here was and LumaPower was it speaks to it, and frankly, all these technologies that have been showcased today speak to the changes and the rapid changes that are happening in the ecosystem right now, and that there's new chemistries coming online or revisions to those chemistries coming online, and new technologies coming online, and we want to make sure that with our partners in the federal government, that the flexibility of adoption or adaptation of the legislation continues as the technologies evolve, so that we're capturing the best of class technologies in there. So thank you very much, Rob, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike now. Mike, and go.
All right. Yeah, thanks very much, Brian. It's appreciate that. I'll just share a screen here and make sure that's up for everybody. There we go. You got that there?
Perfect.
All right, wonderful. Well, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity, Brian. Really appreciate it. And thanks for everybody on the call. My name is Mike Peasgood. I'm CEO and co-founder at Envigo, and we are focused on electrifying the boating industry. So a little bit of context on motivations for me. I'm an entrepreneur tech guy out in Waterloo. Last adventure was building Ariane Labs. We built military grade, industrial grade drones coming out of the University of Waterloo research phase, did commercialization from from the very early days of drones, and sold that business in 2019, which gave me the opportunity to get back up to the lake. Wanted to get out on the water, get the family out there again, and then I hit a bit of a struggle. So found I was one of many people who are driving an electric car now, loving the electric car experience, and never having to go to a gas station, never changing oil anymore. And now I was driving my electric car to the gas station to fill up the boat and doing an oil change on the bottom of the engine. So assumed that there must be a good solution out there in the boating space that corresponds to our new EV lifestyle, and I didn't find one. So really wanted to dig into why not, and how can we clean up this industry, which is emitting 10 million tons of CO2 in the US every year. So really the challenge with combustion boats, we all understand, and a ton of maintenance, and they're wildly inefficient. The challenge with electric boats, in terms of just doing a direct replacement like we've done in the EV space, is it takes so much power to push a boat through the water. You don't end up with a compelling story for the end customer. It gets really heavy because you need 10 times as much power to push a boat through the water as you do to push a car down the road, because you're creating a huge wake and losing a lot of energy to the drag on the boat. So I dug into this and then started leaning on some of my background experience from the drone space and said, well, what if we make it fly? Let's look at hydrofoiling again, which is not a brand new technology, but it hasn't been brought into the recreational boating space for a few reasons. One is that it's actually technically kind of challenging, and the boating industry does not have the same kind of aerospace experience that we developed in the drone space of making difficult things fly. So our approach to this is bringing a hydrofoiling solution, which gives us 3 to 4 times the performance of a conventional boat. That really enables the electric powertrain to be practical. We can now get the range and comparable performance to a gas-powered boat. And it also creates a cool experience of flying over the water. It feels more like piloting a plane or a fighter jet across the top of the water instead of crashing through waves and getting nauseous in the top. So that's really, I think, the piece which is going to enable us to flip the market, to get the consumer adoption to switch to electric, instead of the current situation where they have to spend more to get less. We're going to give them something very new and very cool. Lots of other technology background from our side in terms of bringing the other capabilities that we see in automotive for safety, ease of use, building more sensor technologies, and ease of control and docking. All of that is part of the technology pipeline. We're starting out with prove the hydrofoiling capability and experience on a really exceptional showcase boat. So we're really excited about the opportunity to enable adoption of electric in that space. Right now, it's maybe 1 to 2% of the boating space is electrified. The hydrofoiling capability, I believe, is really going to enable that adoption rate to start catching up with what we've seen in the automotive space. So a huge opportunity there on the growth side. Our go-to-market strategy is to start with that first consumer boat, which is really a top-tier luxury performance experience, not unlike what Tesla did with the Roadster. Not aiming for a mass market first out. This is really proving that you can get a better experience and create the brand value there. Then moving into the broader market with a growth strategy and a scale strategy where we can start partnering and bring the volumes up, bring the costs down, and start tackling the emissions from the broader industry opportunity. Little background. As I say, I was a founder at Arion, which is since bought by FLIR, and I've been able to draw a lot of the talent that we've got there, deep expertise in robotics, automation, and some fantastic yacht design experience that we've brought in from a fellow named David Weiss, who spent most of his time designing super yachts, but was really excited about the electrification and flight control. So last year we had a half-scale 12-foot boat in the water. We got the experience. The flight over water is amazing, and we proved out the technology and the opportunity for the cost savings and performance. We're building that 24-foot scale prototype of that production boat right now. We'll have that in the water later this year, and we'll be raising capital right now to support the production and commercialization with getting the first units out to customers next year. So happy to talk to anyone interested in either being the early adopter or an interested boating enthusiast to help bring on the future of electric boating. We're currently raising a seed round of funding on the order of $5 to $6 million, following on our previous round of about $2 million of a pre-seed, and those funds going to support that first commercialization efforts. So thanks very much, Brian. Thanks everybody. We'll pass it back.
Wonderful, Mike. Thank you very much. And we wanted to have you here because I think your case really highlights a couple different things. One is that one of the asset classes that is that these credits are available to is non-road zero emission vehicles, and so there's some definition on what those are, but that definition is still a little bit unclear, and will need to be tested. Of course, the tax credits are for corporations, so yeah, consumer, the consumer probably, but there's certainly lots of different structures under which one would buy these, and if you end up doing the more commercial grade types,
exactly. Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, and I think that's really understanding where the opportunities are and where the government really wants to see that technology go. And we can once we establish with that first consumer boat, definitely opportunities to move into ferry, taxi services, and commercial boats. And that's where really the economics works out as well, because if you've got the higher duty cycle that's out there, the cost of gas is a huge driver. And we've got a huge market there, so that's definitely down the road for us.
And anybody who's ever filled up a boat, and hasn't felt a little bit of guilt as they spill gas in the water, should be certainly should be. So this certainly, I would love to see performance in the electric boating space, because certainly the motors that I have seen, well, they wouldn't move me very fast anyway, but that's a different story. We've done a around the world in technologies very, very quickly here. There certainly are a couple of questions. I think we've been answering those along the way. Martin, any thoughts or Jonathan, any thoughts in terms of the companies that you've seen, concerns of or commentary around what they should be doing to ensure that they're eligible for those tax credits, or that their customers are? Any just sort of sweeping thoughts while I look at the questions?
Oh, so sorry, I was actually answering questions as they came.
That's good. I'm good with that.
because I was just listening, so I was doing something, the ADHD kicking in. So the very first one is with, as I said, that all these tax credits are only applied to CCPC or to corporations. It doesn't have to be Canadian corporations, it has to be domestic, but it has to be in Canada. That's who gets them, is an entity that files a corporate tax return. They are available to partnerships. There was some partnerships, but it involves partnerships with corporations. So, there is that. So, in terms of anything that's purely sort of commercial, the other question is, it would be, except for the manufacturing credit, which goes to the people who buy the equipment to manufacture these things, it would seem that anything that's sort of headed towards the commercial or headed towards consumer, the consumers are generally not incorporated, and that wouldn't really work. So one of the questions came on, would and it applies directly to Shark. Someone was talking about, well, what about any sort of passive geothermal? And the answer is geothermal applies. It does apply to geothermal, but and this is one of the things that we've been sort of working on, is you actually kind of have to create an entity that is sort of a mini utility, that is a entity. So even if you had a bunch of residential units and you were selling a residential unit, you would have to have this separate mini utility that might be managed by one of the technology management or software companies that we spoke about, or have a battery attached to the Shark, or have these technologies, but they would be a separate utility unit that would buy and implement and then charge a fee, and they would be able to get the tax credit. And so if you structured it appropriately, you would be able to still sort of apply it to a consumer environment, but you'd have to do it. It would be the same thing like for the commercial boat. If it were as a service, you had a corporation that bought these things and then rented them out as their business, then that corporation would be able to do that, or even a leasing business, that you might be pushing it of don't buy it from us, lease it from us. And then, that separate entity that was the leasing company buys them all and then leases them to your clients as a service. That could work, for example. So you're always going to have to look at this idea of restructuring it back into, well, how do we create a corporation that's actually going to be able to claim for this credit? And that's sort of the I would say the issue, but also the opportunity. I'm a tax lawyer, so moving stuff and creating an entity and then drawing a diagram and making it all work is kind of what I do for a living. So that's exciting for me. I don't know. Sorry, following up, Martin, did you have any other comments? I can talk forever. So.
No, I mean, that's when it comes to exactly structuring is going to be really important as you look at these things, and the structure of your business could impact which credit you're in, whether you're in the clean technology or the clean electricity when that one rolls out. So I think there's a lot of things that need to be considered, and they are geared towards corporations. Like, this is where they're pushing things, but there is, like you said, Jonathan, partnerships and taxable Canadian corporations that are members of a partnership. That works too. So it all depends on the structure.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is it continues to be the issue is that this is going to be, now you might be technologically capable, but if someone were to audit, it would be the CRA, and they tend to be pretty nitpicky. And historically, even though it seems like push me, pull you, the government is saying, yes, do this. And then the CRA goes, no, you're not getting your credit. So you always have to sort of protect yourself through documenting everything you're doing and keeping track of everything, and or even keeping track of your best efforts. And so there's going to be still sort of a documentation and filing function that is going to be critical to these, because as I said before, it's like a government has a policy, a new government comes in that doesn't like that policy, orders can come down to the CRA that the answer is no, and then you have to fight for it. Okay, so that can happen. Or as with tax credits, these are like unlimited liabilities to the government. They might say, well, we thought this was going to be X, and it's like it's 5X, and all of a sudden the CRA has orders to like pull that in because it's costing us too much money, especially as you go towards a period when they're running, prior to elections. We've seen with SR&ED in particular, the severity of the audits depend upon how close we get to an election, because the government wants to run a balanced budget, and they've got this unfunded liability out there that they not want to dial back. So we have seen that cycle of, and then again during COVID, they were throwing credits out the door like there was no tomorrow, and nobody was paying attention at all. So, you can, the only way to deal with that is through documentation and through proper structuring and through proper partnering to make sure that you have the capacity to be able to not only file your credits appropriately, but then defend them should something happen. Like I said, because I'm a lawyer, I tend to think about all the things that
can go wrong.
Yeah. So,
well, I think that
if you're talking to me, it usually has. So, so.
Well, I think I think that's to me the main takeaway, or one of the big takeaways from today and for these tax credits as we actually plan for projects versus think about the potential for maybe having tax credits. But this is the time. Right now is the time to start putting pen to paper and reviewing the legislation, reviewing the assets that are eligible, talking to Jonathan, talking to Martin, talking to myself about what is eligible, and putting that plan in place, whether it's retroactive to March 28th, 2023, or for CCUS, Jan 1, 2022, or whether it's manufacturing as Jan 1, 2024. And whenever those assets became available for use, whether it's in the past or in the future, now is the time to start putting that evidence together, putting an evidentiary regime. I'm having a flashback to my SR&ED partner days, but basically, I mean, it's a close genetic neighbor to the SR&ED program. Have your documentation there, have your substantiation there, and work with good partners to ensure that you are on side with the legislation. Martin, any last comments to you? I know there's some questions in the Q&A that we probably won't be able to get to, but we'll try and do that afterwards and respond to people if I've got names.
Great. No last comments from me. It's excellent. Thank you, Brian.
Absolutely. Well, I want to wrap it up. We try to stay as close to an hour as we can, 5 o'clock. I was hoping that I would have a final hurrah for you, but according to my screen over here, we are awaiting the arrival of the Governor General. So my hope is that you will see a note on LinkedIn or what have you from me later on today, or certainly likely tomorrow, that we have legislated and with the King's approval, the Governor General's approval, tax credits for all 4 of these tax credits: CCUS, clean technology, hydrogen, and clean technology manufacturing, which we've been waiting for and working towards for the last 2 years. So stay tuned, and certainly a very, very good week for the clean tech ecosystem. So with that, thank you very much for joining us, everybody. I'll try to answer some of the questions online afterwards, and we will see you all soon. Bye-bye.